It's 3 a.m., and the silence in this empty apartment is deafening. Sleep is a cruel joke. My phone glows in the dark, the screen a portal to a world of distractions, but all I can see are the memories, flashing like a strobe light in my brain. Maybe if I write it all down, I can somehow exorcise the demons. So, here goes. My name is Liam, and I'm 32. Until a few months ago, I thought I had it all. A beautiful wife, Clara, 31, a nice house in a decent neighborhood, 2 steady incomes. We were that couple, the ones people looked at with a hint of envy, the picture of success and happiness. We even had Max, a massive Maine Coon cat, a giant ball of orange fluff who was basically our furry child. He'd sleep on my chest every night and attack my feet at exactly 5:30 a.m. every damn morning. Clara always joked. Max liked me better. She wasn't wrong. He was my shadow, my little buddy, my co-conspirator in late-night snack raids. For 2 years, we'd been trying to have a kid. 2 freaking years. At first, it was exciting. Tonight might be the night, babe. The playful anticipation, the silly grins. But after months turned into years of negative pregnancy tests, it became a dark cloud. Each month was the same agonizing cycle. Hope, feverish anticipation, gut-wrenching disappointment. Then silence. The kind of silence that weighs more than any argument. We'd just sit there, staring at the bathroom tiles, not talking, because what was there to say? Better luck next time? Yeah, right. I remember one night vividly. Another negative test. Clara was huddled on the cold bathroom floor, sobbing. I knelt beside her, wanting to say something, anything, to ease the pain, but the words felt hollow, meaningless. All our friends were popping out babies left and right, flooding Instagram with their perfect family portraits, while we were stuck in this endless loop of despair. We were the outliers, the failures. After a battery of tests, the doctors said there was nothing specifically wrong with either of us. Unexplained infertility, they called it. Those 2 words haunted me. It was a dead end, a diagnosis that wasn't a diagnosis, a maddening, frustrating situation with no clear fix. Then Clara brought up IVF. I remember the moment. We were in bed, the lights off, Max purring softly between us. Her voice was small, shaky. It's our best chance, she whispered. I didn't hesitate. Yes, I said immediately. Anything. Anything to make her happy, to build our family. We were in this together, right? A team. That's what marriage was supposed to be. The financial burden was significant. Insurance covered some, but we had to dip deep into our savings. But I figured it was worth it. It had to be worth it. In the end, we would have our family. Clara took the reins on the entire IVF process. She said I was already stressed with work and she'd handle all the appointments. It's routine stuff, babe, she'd say, her eyes sparkling with a renewed hope. The clinic will call if they need anything important. And I trusted her. Completely. Foolishly. I did go to a few key appointments. When we went in for the embryo transfer, I was right there, holding her hand. The sterile smell of the clinic, the crisp white sheets, the nervous energy in the air. The doctor explained the procedure, her voice calm and reassuring. I remember thinking, this is it. This was our special moment, the beginning of our family. I even took a picture of us in that sterile room, a snapshot of pure hope to remember the day our child's life began. The first few months after the procedure were perfect. Everything seemed to be falling into place. Clara was finally pregnant. The morning sickness wasn't too bad. We started turning the spare room into a nursery. I spent a weekend painting it a soft, calming blue. Max, of course, tried to help by walking through the paint tray and then across the carpet. That was fun to clean up. We were even on the same page about not finding out the gender. We wanted it to be a surprise. Clara had names picked out for either option. We were making plans, building a future. At least, That's what I thought we were doing. Her pregnancy progressed smoothly. She hit the 5-month mark and was finally showing for real. Not just the "is she pregnant or did she just have a big lunch" kind of showing. With each passing week, I got more and more excited about becoming a dad. I already had a list of dad jokes ready to go, ready to unleash upon an unsuspecting world. One night, I decided to tackle the crib. The instructions might as well have been written in hieroglyphics. Took me 3 hours and a YouTube tutorial to figure it out. Max kept jumping in the box and attacking the little Allen wrench. Not helpful, buddy. At this point, I was doing all the little things new dads do. Reading the What to Expect books Clara bought. Downloading apps that told me how big the baby was each week. Your baby is now the size of an avocado. All that stuff. I was all in, head over heels, completely and utterly consumed by the idea of being a father. Then, one Tuesday night, everything shattered. I was going through some boring insurance paperwork, making sure everything was covered for the delivery. Clara was already asleep. I sat at the kitchen table, Max purring in my lap, sorting through the mountain of medical forms and bills we'd accumulated. That's when I saw it. A sperm donor ID number. It wasn't mine. Not my name. Not my patient number from the clinic. Some completely different code. At first, I thought I was just tired, misreading the numbers. I checked it again, compared it to my own patient number from another form. No match. That was the moment the blood in my veins turned to ice. The air in my lungs seemed to solidify. I told myself it had to be a mistake. The clinic probably just messed up the paperwork. There was no way this was real, right? Clara wouldn't. She couldn't. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I even knew who she was anymore. The woman I loved, the woman I trusted, the woman I had built my life with, suddenly felt like a complete stranger. The next morning, I waited until Clara left for work, then drove straight to the IVF center. I remember sitting in the parking lot for at least 20 minutes, just trying to work up the courage to go in, because deep down, I think I already knew. I knew what I was going to find. When I finally walked in, the receptionist gave me a strange look, a fleeting glance of pity or perhaps knowledge. I tried to stay calm, to project an air of normalcy. "Hi," I said, my voice strained but polite. I was reviewing some paperwork for my wife's treatment, and I noticed something strange. "Can you confirm which embryo was used for our procedure?" The receptionist, Sarah, according to her name tag, smiled and started typing away at her computer. I watched her face, searching for any hint of deception. Then I saw it. The subtle shift in her expression, the slight frown, the almost imperceptible head tilt. My stomach dropped. "That's odd," she said, squinting at her screen. "It looks like the embryo used wasn't the one initially assigned to your case." I felt my heart pounding in my ears, a frantic drumbeat against the silence. "What do you mean?" She looked up at me, her expression a mixture of confusion and concern. "It looks like a donor specimen was used instead." My head swam, but that should have required my signed consent. I just stared at her, trying to keep my voice steady, to hold on to some semblance of composure. "I never signed anything." She checked the file again, scrolling through the digital records. "It says here that your wife authorized the change." Everything inside me went cold. So they just switched embryos without checking with me? Without my knowledge? Without my consent? Her face went white. "That's not supposed to happen. We have policies to prevent that." "Then explain how it did," I said, my voice barely a whisper, trying not to completely lose it in the middle of the sterile waiting room. She started mumbling about getting a supervisor, about investigating the matter, but I was already heading for the door. I needed to confront Clara. Now. I called my boss on the drive home, told him I had a family emergency. I must have sounded as messed up as I felt, because he didn't even ask questions, just told me to take whatever time I needed. I drove way too fast, my mind racing with a million thoughts. each one more horrifying than the last. Betrayal, deception, lies. Was our entire relationship a lie? By the time I pulled into our driveway, I was shaking from rage and fear and a bone-deep sense of loss. I remember thinking as I put my key in the door that this moment was going to be the dividing line in my life, everything before now and everything after. And I was right. I walked into the house and slammed the door behind me. The sound reverberated through the silent rooms. Max bolted from his favorite window perch like I just set off a firecracker. Poor dude hated loud noises. I expected Clara to be at work, but there she was, sitting on our couch, crying. Her face was red and puffy, her hands shaking as she wiped her eyes. I barely made it inside when she said, "You went to the IVF center." It wasn't even a question. It was an accusation, a confirmation. That's when I knew for sure this wasn't some mix-up, some clerical error. She knew exactly what I'd found out. I just stood there, staring at her, not saying a word. Honestly, I was afraid if I started talking, I'd start yelling, and I've never been the yelling type. My anger always simmered beneath the surface. A slow burn. "Olivia works there," she whispered, avoiding my gaze. She texted me that you were asking questions. She told me you were upset." I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. "Is that the same Olivia who helped you switch the embryos?" She sucked in a breath, her whole body flinching. That was all I needed to see. Confirmation. Guilt. My voice came out ice cold, a voice I barely recognized as my own. "Why, Clara?" She rubbed her face, looking anywhere but at me. She picked at a loose thread on the couch cushion. She stared at her hands. At one point, she tried to reach for my hand, and I instinctively stepped back, as if she were trying to hand me a snake. "You wouldn't understand," she finally said, still not meeting my eyes. I wanted the best for our child. I wanted strong genes, healthy genes." She hesitated, then finally blurted it out. "I used an anonymous donor from the clinic's database. Someone with better genetic traits." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "Better than mine?" She actually thought my genes weren't good enough? I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. Not because anything was funny, but because this wasn't just a betrayal. This was straight-up insanity. "The donor has no family history of heart disease or cancer," she rushed to explain, her voice rising in pitch. "He's tall, athletic, has a doctorate in biochemistry." I wanted to give our baby the best start. "You know what's messed up?" I said, my voice trembling with barely suppressed rage. "My dad had a minor heart condition. Nothing serious, just needed medication." Clara knew that. She was basically saying my family's genes weren't good enough for her. "For our baby." "So you decided that without telling me?" I asked, my voice dangerously low. "You just erased me from our child's life, and you thought that was your decision to make?" She stood up, arms wrapped protectively around her belly. "It's still our baby, Liam. You'll still be the father in every way that matters." "Except actually being the father," I shot back, my anger finally breaking free. "Except for the part where you lied to me for months. Except for the part where you went behind my back and made this massive decision without me." Max had crept back into the room and was sitting in the corner, eyes wide, watching us. Even the cat knew this was bad. "I was trying to do what's best for our family," she said, her voice cracking. "I thought you'd understand if you just what? Found out after the baby was born?" I challenged. "When were you planning to tell me, Clara? Or were you just hoping I'd never find out? That I'd raise some stranger's kid thinking it was mine?" She didn't answer, which was an answer in itself. I ran my hands through my hair, trying to think, trying to make sense of the chaos that had engulfed my life. "And this friend of yours at the clinic, Olivia, she just helped you commit fraud? Because that's what this is. You forged my consent. You lied on medical documents." Clara's eyes went wide, a flicker of fear crossing her face. "It wasn't like that. Olivia just helped with the paperwork. She didn't forge anything, right?" She just conveniently forgot to get my signature before swapping out my sperm for some random donor. There was a long silence, thick with unspoken accusations and the crushing weight of betrayal. Clara kept opening her mouth like she wanted to say something, then closing it again, unable to find the words. Finally, she sat back down, her shoulders slumped, defeated. "I thought I was doing the right thing," she whispered. "I really did." I grabbed my keys from the counter. "I need to get out of here. I need to think." "Where are you going?" Her voice was small, pathetic. "Anywhere but here." As I headed for the door, she called after me, her voice desperate. "Liam, please. We can work through this. We're having a baby." I turned back to her, my heart aching with a pain I couldn't describe. "No, Clara. You're having a baby. I'm apparently just the guy who's supposed to pay for it." I grabbed Max's carrier from the closet, scooped him up despite his protests, and threw some of his food in a bag. No way was I leaving him behind. "You're taking the cat?" she asked, incredulous. "Yeah," I said, my voice flat. "I'm taking the cat. At least he's actually mine." I walked out, not knowing where I was going, just knowing I couldn't stay there another minute without saying things I couldn't take back. Things that would shatter what little remained of our fragile reality. It wasn't until I was halfway down the block that the weight of it all really hit me. Everything I thought I had, everything I had built, it was all a lie. A carefully constructed facade that had crumbled to dust in a single day. Max meowed from his carrier in the passenger seat, his little paws pressing against the mesh, like he was trying to figure out what was going on. "Yeah, buddy," I told him, feeling like an idiot for talking to my cat. But honestly, at that moment, he was the only family I had left. Same. I drove around for hours with no real destination. Just me and Max, cruising the empty streets while I tried to wrap my head around how my life had imploded in a single day. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. The sheer audacity of Clara's deception left me reeling. Eventually, I ended up at my buddy Mark's place. Didn't even call first, just showed up at his door with a cat carrier, and probably looking like I'd seen a ghost. "Dude, what the hell," was Mark's greeting when he opened the door. Then he took one look at my face and his tone softened. "Get in here." I gave him the short version of the story while he grabbed us both beers from his fridge. His reaction was pretty much what you'd expect, lots of what the actual. And she did what? Mark's girlfriend, Jen, came home while I was mid-story and immediately went into crisis mode, setting up the spare room for me, getting a makeshift litter box for Max. I think I was still in shock, because I just let them handle everything while I sat on their couch, staring at nothing. That night, I couldn't sleep. I just laid there in their guest bed, Max purring on my chest, his rhythmic breathing a small comfort in the vast emptiness. I turned my phone off when Clara called for the 8th time. I just couldn't deal with more lies. The next morning, I called my lawyer. Vanessa. She's this badass woman who helped my brother through his divorce a few years back. No nonsense, sharp and completely unflappable. When she asked what was going on, I laid it all out. The whole sordid, unbelievable mess. "If I leave her now, what happens with the baby?" I asked, my voice raw with anxiety. Vanessa leaned back in her chair and frowned. "You're legally presumed the father since you're married, unless you challenge paternity in court." My stomach clenched. "And if I don't contest it, you could still be on the hook for child support, even though it's not biologically yours." I almost threw up right there in her office. Clara had almost trapped me, permanently tied me to this lie. What if I prove she committed fraud? Vanessa tapped her pen on the desk, her expression thoughtful. "That changes everything. If we can show she deliberately misled you, you won't be financially responsible. But we need solid proof. The fertility clinic's documentation helps, but ideally we need her to admit it on record or in writing. And our assets?" I asked, dread filling my gut. "Move them now," she said firmly. "If she files first, she can argue for half of everything. I had a lot to process. But something was still bugging me about Clara's story. The anonymous donor with perfect genes angle felt convenient. Too convenient. Can we subpoena the actual donor records from the clinic? I asked, my mind racing. Vanessa nodded. We can try. They'll fight it on privacy grounds, but given the circumstances, we might have a shot. What are you thinking? She asked, her eyes narrowed, assessing. I'm thinking my wife is still lying to me. For the next few days, I started putting my life back together, piece by piece. First thing I did was pull most of our money out of our joint accounts, leaving just enough that she wouldn't immediately notice it was gone. Probably not the most ethical move, but at that point, I wasn't feeling particularly ethical. I moved all my important documents to Mark's place: birth certificate, passport, the deed to my car. I even called the credit card companies to freeze any new charges on our shared cards. Clara kept calling and texting, pleading messages like, "Please come home, and we need to talk about this," and "I still love you." I ignored most of it, just sent one text saying I needed space. Meanwhile, Vanessa was working tirelessly, navigating the legal maze, trying to get access to the donor records. The clinic was fighting it tooth and nail, claiming patient confidentiality, but the judge was sympathetic to my situation. Apparently, fraud will do that. On day 5 of staying at Mark's, I finally agreed to meet Clara at a coffee shop. Neutral territory. Public place where I wouldn't lose my cool. I got there early and picked a table in the corner, wanting to control the environment, to feel like I had some semblance of power in this situation. When she walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. She looked terrible. Her eyes were puffy and red, her hair was a mess, and she was wearing the same baggy sweatpants she'd had on the day I left. She sat down across from me, her hands immediately reaching for mine across the table. I instinctively pulled back, recoiling from her touch. "Liam, please," she started, her voice trembling. "I know I messed up. I know you're angry. But we can fix this." "Fix what, exactly?" I asked, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. "The fact that you lied to me for months? The fact that you decided my genetics weren't good enough for our child?" She flinched, as if I'd slapped her. "That's not what it was about. I just wanted the best for our baby." "Yeah, you said that. But this anonymous donor story, is that even true?" Her eyes darted away for a split second. "Bingo. Of course it's true," she said, but her voice had that slight quiver, that telltale sign that I knew so well. It meant she was lying. I leaned forward, my gaze unwavering. "Who is it really, Clara?" "Because I'm going to find out one way or another." The meeting at the coffee shop went nowhere. Clara stuck to her anonymous donor story, despite me catching her in the lie. We ended up leaving with nothing resolved, except me feeling even more certain that she was hiding something bigger, something even more sinister. I went back to Mark's place, where Max was living his best life, getting spoiled rotten by Jen, who kept sneaking him treats when she thought I wasn't looking. At least someone was happy in this whole mess. For the next week, I was basically living 2 lives. During the day, I'd go to work, pretend everything was fine, offer polite but vague answers when coworkers asked about Clara and the baby. Then I'd head to meetings with Vanessa, where I'd spend hours documenting everything I could about our finances and the IVF situation. I even drove back to the house one day when I knew Clara would be at her prenatal appointment. Felt weird using my own key to sneak into my own home, but I needed to grab more clothes and check if there was anything else I should take. That's when I found Clara's laptop. She always kept it password protected, but I knew her passwords. She used the same 3 for everything and had me write them down once when she forgot them. Classic Clara, secretive, but also completely disorganized. I hesitated for about 2 seconds before logging in. Normally, I'd never go through someone's private stuff, but normal went out the window when she decided to lie about our kids' paternity. At first, I didn't find much. Just work emails, Amazon orders, pregnancy forums. Then I checked her email trash folder. That's where I struck gold. I found deleted messages between Clara and her friend Olivia from the clinic. dating back almost a year. They were planning the whole thing. Olivia telling Clara when she'd be working so she could handle the paperwork. Clara asking if it was really possible to use a different donor without me finding out. The level of calculated deception made my stomach churn. But the real bombshell was an email thread with someone named Ryan. The subject line was, R. Are you sure about this? I felt my stomach drop as I opened it and started reading. Ryan Matthews, her college boyfriend, the one she dated for 4 years before me. The one she used to mention now and then when talking about her past. The one whose Facebook profile she'd occasionally check, just to see what he's up to. The emails were friendly at first. Catching up. How's life been? That kind of thing. Then Clara mentioned our fertility struggles and how she'd been thinking about him a lot lately. How they'd always talked about having kids together back in college. Then I saw the text that made my blood run cold. Clara told him she was using his sperm from when he donated to the clinic years ago. Apparently, he'd been a regular donor during med school for extra cash. His response was surprise, but not anger. He asked if I knew and was okay with it. Clara straight up told him, Liam doesn't need to know. What he doesn't know won't hurt him. I took pictures of everything with my phone. My hands were shaking so badly some of the shots came out blurry. I forwarded key emails to my own account, then deleted the forwarded messages from her sent folder and emptied her trash. The whole time, I felt like I was going to throw up. It wasn't just some perfect genes donor. It was her ex-boyfriend. She wanted to have his baby, not mine. I must have sat there for 20 minutes, just staring at the wall after I closed the laptop, trying to process the magnitude of her betrayal. Everything made sense now. The secrecy, the lies, why she was so insistent on handling all the IVF appointments herself. When I got back to Mark's place, I sent everything to Vanessa. She called me almost immediately. This changes everything, she said, her voice tight with controlled fury. This proves premeditation and deliberate deception. The judge is going to have a field day with this. What's our next move? I asked, feeling weirdly calm despite the chaos swirling around me. We keep gathering evidence. And we find this Ryan guy. It wasn't hard to find him. Ryan Matthews, physical therapist, working at a clinic about 30 minutes from our house. I looked him up online and recognized him immediately from pictures Clara had shown me years ago. Tall, athletic build, the kind of guy who probably played sports in college, the kind of guy who donates sperm because clinics pay extra for tall, athletic donors. I made an appointment under a fake name. Probably not the most ethical thing, but ethics weren't my priority anymore. The look on his face when I walked into his treatment room instead of the Mark Johnson he was expecting was priceless. Pure shock. Then recognition. Then something that looked a lot like guilt. Liam, he said, frozen in place. What are you doing here? I closed the door behind me, the click echoing in the small room. I think you know exactly why I'm here. To his credit, he didn't try to deny anything. He just sat down heavily on his stool and ran a hand through his hair, his face etched with a mixture of apprehension and remorse. She told me, you agreed to it, he said, finally breaking the silence. That you two had talked about using a donor, and that you were fine with it being me. And you believed that? I challenged, my voice tight with suppressed anger. That I'd be okay with my wife having her ex-boyfriend's baby? He winced, avoiding my gaze. Looking back, no, it doesn't make sense. But Clara can be convincing. Tell me about it, I muttered, the bitterness seeping into my tone. For what it's worth, I didn't know she was lying to you, he said, his eyes pleading for understanding. I wouldn't have agreed if I'd known. I wasn't sure if I believed him. But it didn't really matter. The damage was done. The trust shattered beyond repair. So what happens now? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. Are you going to punch me or something? I almost laughed. No! I just wanted to see if you'd lie to my face like she did. I turned to leave, then stopped. One more thing gnawing at me. a final piece of the puzzle I needed to understand. Did you two reconnect before or after we started trying for a baby? He looked confused for a moment, then his expression cleared. Before, I guess. She reached out maybe 3 years ago. Said she was in town and wanted to grab coffee. We've been in touch on and off since then, 3 years. The whole time we were planning our family, Clara was laying the groundwork for this. I nodded, my heart sinking even lower, and walked out, feeling like the last piece of the puzzle had finally fallen into place, revealing the full, horrifying picture. I drove around for hours, trying to process everything. The betrayal was so much deeper than I'd initially thought. This wasn't just Clara making a messed up decision about genetics. This was Clara planning for years to have her ex's baby while married to me. The calculated cruelty of it all was almost unbearable. I finally headed back to Mark's place around midnight. He and Jen were already asleep, but Max was waiting by the door, like he knew I needed some company. I scooped him up and just sat on the guest bed, petting him, his soft fur a small comfort against the rawness of my emotions, while I tried to figure out what to do next. The next morning, I called Vanessa and told her about my conversation with Ryan. "This is gold," she said, her voice buzzing with excitement. "But we need more. Can you get Clara to admit any of this in writing? Text messages, emails, anything?" I knew what I had to do. It wouldn't be easy. It would require me to play a role, to feign forgiveness, to manipulate Clara into confessing the truth. It was a dirty game, but I was willing to play it. So, I did something I'm not proud of. I texted Clara, telling her I wanted to talk things through, that maybe I was overreacting about the anonymous donor thing. I told her I was willing to listen if she'd just be honest with me. She responded immediately, obviously relieved that I was coming around. We agreed to meet at our house that evening. Before going over, I had one more conversation with Vanessa. We went over the plan for protecting my assets and my future. She had already prepared the divorce papers, just needed my final go-ahead. When I got to the house, Clara had clearly gone all out trying to make it nice. The place was spotless. She'd made my favorite dinner, even put flowers on the table, like this was some minor disagreement we were patching up. "Liam," she said, rushing to hug me when I walked in. "I've missed you so much." I let her hug me, but didn't hug back. Her touch felt foreign, tainted by lies. "We need to talk," I said, not sitting down, even though she gestured toward the dining table she'd so meticulously set. Of course," she said quickly, her eyes bright with hope. "I want to explain everything." "Good," I said, pulling out my phone and hitting record. "Because I have questions." I started recording. "So, tell me again about this donor. The anonymous one with the perfect genes." She launched into the same story she'd told before, about wanting the best genetic profile, about making the choice out of love for our future child. I let her finish, her words flowing over me like a meaningless drone. Then I asked the question that would finally break her. "And there's no other reason you chose this particular donor?" She hesitated, just for a second. A barely perceptible pause that betrayed her guilt. "What do you mean? I mean, is there anything else about him that made you choose him specifically?" Another pause, longer this time. "No, just the health profile." I nodded slowly, feigning understanding. "So, it has nothing to do with the fact that it's Ryan Matthews?" The color drained from her face, leaving her pale and ghostly. Her eyes widened in panic. "What?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I saw the emails, Clara. I talked to Ryan. I know everything." She started crying then. Those big, dramatic tears that used to make me want to fix whatever was wrong, to soothe her pain. Now, they just made me angry. They felt manipulative. A calculated attempt to play on my emotions. "It's not what you think," she sobbed, the tears streaming down her face. "Really?" "Because I think you deliberately chose your ex-boyfriend's sperm, had your friend Olivia bypass clinic protocols, lied to me for months, and planned to let me raise another man's child without ever telling me the truth." Is that not what happened? She kept crying, denying it at first, then eventually admitting the truth, saying how sorry she was, how she never meant to hurt me, how we could still be a family. I turned off the recording. I had what I needed, the confession I'd been searching for, the irrefutable proof of her deceit. I'm filing for divorce, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. The weight of my anger had been replaced by a strange sense of calm, a quiet resolve. I've already moved most of my stuff out. You can keep the furniture, but the house is in my name, and I'll be selling it. You can't do that, she said, suddenly looking panicked. The tears had stopped, replaced by a look of raw fear. I'm pregnant. Where am I supposed to go? That sounds like a problem for you and Ryan to figure out, I said, my voice flat and devoid of emotion. He doesn't want anything to do with the baby, she practically screamed, her voice cracking with desperation. He just donated sperm. He's not ready to be a father. I almost laughed. The irony was almost too much to bear. Well, neither am I. At least, not to this kid. Max chose that moment to meow loudly from his carrier by the door. I'd brought him with me to get the rest of his things. He seemed to sense the tension in the room, the raw emotions swirling around us. You're leaving? She yelled, her voice rising hysterically, the tears flowing freely again. You're just going to walk out on me? On your baby? While crying, Liam, please, I said flatly. I know I messed up badly, but I love you. We can work through this. I turned to look at her. Really look at her. Maybe for the last time as her husband. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I had loved, was gone. Replaced by a stranger, a manipulative, deceitful woman who I no longer recognized. No, Clara, I said, my voice devoid of emotion. You don't love me. You love what I provide. Stability. A home. A father for your baby. If you loved me, you wouldn't have done this. I picked up Max's carrier and headed for the door. I'll have my lawyer contact you about the divorce proceedings, I said, not looking back. Don't call me anymore. As I walked to my car, I felt a weird mix of emotions. Anger, obviously. Hurt, definitely. But also relief. Like I'd finally cut loose an anchor that had been dragging me down, suffocating me. Max meowed again from his carrier, his voice plaintive, questioning. I know, buddy, I told him, his soft fur under my hand. Let's go home. Our real home. That night, I sent the recording to Vanessa. She texted back almost immediately. Perfect, she wrote. She admitted enough. We move forward tomorrow. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal meetings, paperwork, and planning. Vanessa filed the divorce papers and a motion to legally establish that I wasn't the father of Clara's baby. The legal machine was churning. Meanwhile, Clara was blowing up my phone with messages ranging from desperate apologies to angry accusations. You're abandoning me when I need you most. I can't believe you're being so cruel. And my personal favorite, it's still your baby in every way that matters. I blocked her number after that one. I couldn't take it anymore. The emotional roller coaster, the constant barrage of guilt and manipulation. I needed to protect myself, to shield myself from her toxicity. Mark and Jen let me stay with them while I looked for a new place. I found a decent apartment that allowed cats and wasn't too far from work. It was small and unremarkable, but it was mine. A fresh start, a blank canvas. The hardest part was dealing with friends and family who didn't know the whole story. Clara had apparently been telling people I'd had some kind of mental breakdown and abandoned her during her pregnancy. Some people actually believed her, which showed me who my real friends were. The rumor mill ran wild. My parents were solidly on my side once I explained what happened. My mom cried when I told her she wouldn't be getting the grandchild we'd all been expecting. My dad just put his hand on my shoulder and said, "You're doing the right thing, son." Their support was invaluable, a lifeline in the sea of chaos. When the court date finally came, I was a nervous wreck. Despite all the evidence, all the preparation, I still feared the possibility of losing, of being trapped in this nightmare forever. Vanessa presented the emails, the texts, the recorded conversation, the testimony from the clinic about protocol violations. She even had a statement from Ryan, confirming Clara had misled him about my knowledge and consent. Every time Clara's lawyer tried to paint me as the villain for abandoning my pregnant wife, the judge would just look at the evidence folder and raise an eyebrow. And every time Clara's lawyer tried to interrupt, the judge held up her hand, silencing him with a steely glare. The judge was a no-nonsense woman with a reputation for being tough but fair. She listened intently to all the evidence, her expression impassive, giving nothing away. "I've seen a lot in this courtroom," she said at one point, her voice resonating with authority, "but the level of deception here is extraordinary." The final judgment came down exactly as Vanessa had predicted. The divorce was granted. I wasn't legally responsible for the child, and Clara got nothing from our shared assets, since the fraud was so clearly documented. Given the evidence of fraud, Mr. Wilson's assets remain his sole property. Mrs. Wilson will not receive any financial compensation from this divorce, the judge said, her voice clear and unwavering. Additionally, given that Mr. Wilson is not the biological father, the court recognizes his right to revoke any paternal claims to the child. He will not be financially obligated for child support. Clara's lawyer made one last, desperate attempt, asking for consideration due to her vulnerable state as an expectant mother. The judge shut that down immediately. Mrs. Wilson willingly deceived her husband, knowingly altered medical procedures without his consent, and falsified financial statements. There will be no additional compensation awarded. One tap of the gavel. Case closed. Clara just sat there, frozen, her face a mask of disbelief and despair. Her lawyer closed his briefcase without a word and walked away, leaving her alone to face the consequences of her actions. I stood, buttoning my suit jacket, and walked out without looking back. I couldn't bear to see her pain, even though she had caused it all herself. Outside the courthouse, I took the deepest breath I'd had in months. The air felt clean, crisp, and liberating. It was finally over. I was free. That was 6 months ago now. I'm still in my apartment, though I'm thinking about buying a small house with a yard where Max can watch birds. He's doing great, by the way, currently sleeping on the keyboard as I try to type this. His presence is a constant source of comfort, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is still love and loyalty in the world. I deleted all my social media for a while, just to avoid the drama. When I came back online, I found out Clara had moved back to her hometown to live with her parents. The baby was born last month. A boy, according to mutual friends who still talk to her. I try not to think about it. I try to block out the images of Clara holding her son, of Ryan's child growing up in a world where I played no part. Looking back, I'm still amazed at how quickly someone I thought I knew completely could turn into a stranger. The Clara I married and the Clara who did this to me, they can't be the same person, right? But they are. And I just didn't see it until it was almost too late. If there's any lesson here, I guess it's that you never really know someone, even after years together. People can surprise you in the worst ways. But also, you're stronger than you think. 6 months ago, I thought my life was over. Now, I'm doing okay. Not great, not terrible. Just okay. And sometimes, okay is enough. Enough to start again. Enough to rebuild, enough to find happiness in the small things, enough to let the scars fade, to learn from the pain, and to move forward. Final update. Hey Reddit, it's Liam again. Wasn't planning on updating, but some crazy shit went down last weekend that I need to share. I'm chilling at home, watching the game with Max curled up on the couch beside me, when someone starts pounding on my door. Hard. Like they're trying to break it down. I cautiously approach the door, peering through the peephole, and my blood runs cold. It's Clara! And she's not alone. Standing behind her are her parents and her brother, Mike. And she's holding the baby. Before I can even react, they push their way into my house, forcing me back against the wall. "What the hell are you doing?" I shout, my heart pounding in my chest. Clara's mom immediately starts with it, her face contorted with anger and self-righteousness. "It's time you took responsibility for your son. I can't believe what I'm hearing." "My son?" We both know that's not my kid. There was a whole court case about this, remember? DNA evidence? Ryan Matthews? Your ex-boyfriend whose sperm you used? Mike gets in my face, his eyes blazing with hostility. Ryan skipped town 3 months ago, completely ghosted Clara, quit his job, deleted his social media. He's not paying any child support. I try to stay calm, to maintain some semblance of control in this chaotic situation. "That sucks for her," I say, my voice even. "But it has nothing to do with me." Clara starts crying, bouncing the fussy baby in her arms. "I made a mistake, Liam. A horrible mistake." Her dad jumps in, his voice booming with indignation. "In the eyes of God, the kid is still your responsibility, because you were married when he was conceived." The audacity of these people is astounding. Clara actually has the nerve to say, "Look at him, Liam. He could be yours." "We don't really know for sure." I stare at her, speechless. "We do know for sure. There was a paternity test. It was in your court documents." Her mom chimes in, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "Those tests can be wrong. Look at his eyes. They're just like yours." The level of gaslighting these people are attempting is unreal. They're trying to rewrite history, to erase the truth, to manipulate me into accepting a lie. I reach my breaking point. "I want you all to leave," I say, my voice trembling with anger. "Get out of my house. Now." Mike shoves me, sending me stumbling backward. "You're just going to abandon your wife and child?" "She's not my wife, and that's not my child," I retort, my voice rising in pitch. "And if you touch me again, I'm calling the cops." Clara, still sobbing, pleads with me. "Liam, please. I can't do this alone. My parents are helping, but I had to quit my job. We're barely making ends meet." For a split second, I almost feel bad. Almost? Then I remember the months of lying and deception, the deliberate manipulation, the calculated cruelty, and the flicker of sympathy dies. Mike tries to step toward me again, his fists clenched, his face contorted with rage, but his dad holds him back, restraining him with a firm grip. "You'll regret this," Mike says, his voice a low, menacing growl. "We know where you work. We know your parents' address." That's when I snap. I pull out my phone and start recording. "Are you threatening me?" I ask, my voice cold and steady. "Should I call the police now? Or would you like to leave peacefully?" They finally leave, grudgingly, their faces a mixture of anger and defeat. As they walk out the door, Clara's dad turns back to me and spits out, "This isn't what a real man would do." I just shake my head, my heart pounding in my chest. A real man doesn't let himself be manipulated. A real man doesn't accept a lie. The next day, I find out Clara's family contacted Vanessa, trying to reopen the case. She shut it down immediately, reminding them about the conclusive paternity test and the judge's ruling. I also installed security cameras around my house and documented the confrontation in case they try something else. Mike's threat about knowing where I work was especially concerning, so I gave my boss a heads up about the situation. He was understanding and supportive, assuring me that the company would take any necessary steps to ensure my safety. Max has been extra clingy since that day, following me around the apartment, sleeping at the foot of my bed. I've never been more thankful for this cat. His presence is a constant reminder that I'm not alone, that there is still love and loyalty in the world, even after everything I've been through.